Let's go ahead and kick off our evangelical hall of shame. Carl, I know you've got like a little bromance going with a dude we're going to be talking about quite a bit today. So who is it? Who is it, Carl?
Greg Locke is the pastor of Global Vision in Mount Juliet, I think, Tennessee. It's not hard to find on the internet. He's all over that. He became famous when he, during COVID, in that time frame, when he was against the masks. He was pro-Trump. He was outlandish. And his history is that he was an orphan, basically, and lived in boys' homes and things like that. And then I suppose got saved, and I don't know how much education he got after that, but then he became a preacher, and he's a fiery type of unhinged kind of preacher. But the first video about him is probably when he began to be famous, and he had a video about masks. So we can listen to that.
If they go through round 2 and you start showing up all these masks and all this nonsense, I'll ask you to leave. I will ask you to leave. I am not playing these Democrat games up in this church. If you want a social distance, go to First Baptist Church, but don't come to this one. I'm done with it. I said I'm done with it. I ain't playing these stupid games.
You can see in the video, he's talking about that no one is going to be allowed in his church with a mask or any of that stuff, whatever that stuff is, on, right? Anybody that's conscious about the pandemic is not allowed in here. No Democrat stuff like that in this church is what he talks about. So I talked to a couple of pastors in my area during that time and said, what do you do?
Get out. Out of here now, JD. Get out of here.
Just trying
the Holy Spirit cannot pierce the mask.
I'm trying to stay out of Greg Locke's church.
Yeah. Is that all it takes? I'm not.
If it's that easy, I'll just wear the mask. It's okay. It doesn't bother me much.
I would go and wear a mask. And
go with the mask.
See what he really does. They say he's a real gentle person in real life, but when he gets on stage, he's like threatening people with a microphone. I'll knock you in the head with this microphone. You can get out if you want. He says that a lot. And if you wear a mask, then I'm going to kick you out of here.
It's the same thing we talked about in the last segment.
Yeah.
It's the grifter, the alpha male thing. But like I was saying earlier, a lot of times when you encounter those people, they say that at first. But then when someone picks up a brick or someone goes, okay, let's throw down, they go, I would, but my buddy's going to hold me back. So I guess you're lucky, punk. It's just like, shut the fuck.
Yeah, he seems like just the epitome of the little guy complex, you know.
And he sounds like Yosemite Sam, which is also a little guy. And
so I think we should mail him via the podcast, mail him some pop guns so he can do that. Not wearing a mask in my church. That would be good, I think.
Yeah, and maybe he would do it if it got attention. I think, that's just kind of the outlandish things. I saw a couple of videos from that time frame where he's standing in the middle of a park in Washington, D.C., ranting and raving about things, or he's in a spirit shop or something where he's, devaluing Sage. Sage is demon, and he does talk a lot about Jezebel, that kind of categorization of things. He's just really ignorant, and it's the thing that bothered me the most about Greg Locke is when he said, even when I'm right, when I'm wrong, you still have to follow me because I'm your pastor. And so, and also when there's a group in his church that split off, they're mad at him. I can't remember the name of the group, but I went into that group kind of incognito and just and very quickly I learned they may hate Greg Locke and they may think he didn't do something exactly right, but they're still exactly like him, and they're the same kind of person. And it was just toxic and everyone in that group judging each other in the group and Greg Locke, and it's horrible. I don't think I'd ever want to be part of a church or organization like that. It's just totally toxic, totally entertainment. They have their music for their worship services. Watch a full service. It's like an hour and a half. It's real indoctrinating and designed to get you in that mood for then he can come up and say whatever crazy ass thing he wants to. And they probably accept it. Even when he says, I'm going to throw you out of here, I don't care, you know. And there's another thing I want to talk about later. I have so much to say about Greg Locke, but I want to listen to this other video where right after Barbie came out, the movie, which I really enjoyed, he kind of took issue with that and related it to 2 Corinthians 10. It says the weapons of warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to be for the pulling down of strongholds, casting down arguments and everything that falls against the knowledge of God. So that pulling down, he oddly enough, rightly diagnosed it as being demolition. So we need to demolish our strongholds was the point of the message, but he took it out on the Barbie House, which he claimed was only a Walmart knockout. It wasn't a real Barbie house, but ties a Bible to that. And we can see that in the video that he ties a Bible to a baseball bat and then demolishes the Barbie house on stage, of course, to cheers and so on. So
that is a Bible that is duct taped and zip tied to an Easton ball bat. Let me show you. I'm about to show you something crazy. Watch this. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the, watch the next phrase, pulling down of strongholds. You ought to pay attention to what the Greek word for pulling down means. It's the word demolition. That's what it means. It doesn't just mean, well, you know, I'm just going to pull it. It means you demolish the house that the evil spirit left when you kicked it out. So maybe at our Global Vision store, we ought to start selling some Bible bats in the name of Jesus. Because what some of you need to understand is you've been delivered from a demon, but you've not pulled down the stronghold yet. You got to get rid of the triggers on that iPhone. You got to get rid of the triggers on that Netflix. You got to lose her number. You got to lose his number. The demon comes out when you expel it. The stronghold comes down when you demolish it with the Bible. You gotta start tearing that mess up. You gotta break it down. You gotta cast down imagination and every high thing that exalts itself. You gotta get in the Bible and beat that stronghold to death.
Yeah. No, I think that the thing I love about, I'm going to give him props for one thing in that video. Okay. I think the metaphor of him having a Bible wrapped to a bat is very much like their belief system within all of this. Like, I feel like it is very like apt. This idea that I need the Bible attached to some sort of a weapon to go around and smash things, which again, it feels very like, if anyone's ever been around like young kids, you build blocks up and they love to knock them down. I feel like that's I feel like that's where his intellect is kind of at as well here too. It's just so simple, but it's also so stupid.
Yeah.
Again, back to my gun thing. Smashing stuff is fun, but it first of all is it is like a weirdly honest thing, and it's kind of like that's not the flex you think it is, Greg. But like that's you're but it also just goes against the Bible verse that he quotes. Like, I mean, what It says the weapons that we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they are the divine power to demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets upon itself on the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. So, it sounds like we're talking about going to use our words, Greg. Speaking back to the 3-year-old, Greg, we're not going to smash it. We're not going to smash it. We're going to talk about it. Can we talk about how you feel? I think that's what Greg needs, is a fucking therapist. Christ almighty.
Yeah, definitely does. There was, there's the side story of his wife that he left for the secretary when his wife had a mental illness. That people have reported on that, and I think accurately that she did have a mental illness, and that in a lot of cases she was at home with their 4 kids. And most of that, where she was acting out, was she wanted him to come home and probably help her with those 4 kids, especially if she had a mental illness. But like, other people that we've kind of chronicled before, other people like who else was I thinking about? But anyway, they, instead of pulling back from the ministry and going home and helping his wife, he just continued to, like, he slept at the church the last night of their commitment to each other. He slept at the church, stayed overnight, and then left to go somewhere else, and didn't address the thing that she's just texting him over and over again. Come home. I need you to come home. And so that, then almost immediately he hooks up with the secretary and still married to her now.
Almost immediately. He spent the night at the church.
I wonder if she spent the night at the church too.
That's going through my head. Such a sacrificial guy. He was like, I'm just going to spend the night at the church.
Yeah.
It's just a cross all bear.
Well. I thought that as well. And it was kind of, the person I was thinking about was the Tony Jones incident. So, he did the same thing. He called his wife batshit crazy in public and told that to everybody, while he had a spiritual wife on the side, which he denies, but then marries her pretty quickly after he gets rid of the other person, the mother of his kids. So there's a guy out there named Tennessee Brando that has really good insights, and he's from Tennessee, and he has some really good insights on all of that. And you can probably find the video out there about when he left his wife for the secretary and his explanation of that. But my question, what in your mind, when you guys see Greg Locke, what do you think? Because I have my thoughts about him, but what do you guys think? Oh, the last part of the story is this, and this is why I wrote the blog originally, but the last part of the story is that he preaches a little later on, after he smashes the Barbie house, he preaches about God's divine judgment one week, and the very next week, his tent, we were talking about snow earlier, gets some snow on it and collapses and destroys the whole thing pretty much. They had to get a new tent and everything, and you can look online and hear him lamenting over that, and he doesn't remember that he just preached about God's judgment. But my point was, maybe it was Barbie. You destroyed her house, and now she's coming for revenge.
Yeah, you don't fuck with Barbie.
You probably should. I wouldn't, for sure. It's always interesting that whenever bad stuff happens to churches and things like that, or people in the church, it's always, this is either a test from God or it's the devil attacking us. But whenever it happens to whoever is their enemy, it's God's divine judgment. It's very convenient when you have these like unfalsifiable claims that you have. My other thing on that is just like this, like, it's like sleeping with your secretary or leaving your wife. He claims he didn't sleep with her, so I'll whatever. That's what he says. His story. I don't have any evidence to prove otherwise. Whatever. Either way, you leave your wife for your secretary. It's so like 1950s. Like, that's boring. Like, I think more, if you're gonna do it, you should do it big. Like, you should do what like Ted Haggart did. Like, go buy meth off of a male prostitute. Okay, do something fun.
That's classy. Yeah.
It's boring. Honestly.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
I think it my word that you were asking for, I think it's compensation. I think it's compensation, and it's filling holes that he never dealt with, probably from childhood trauma, because he, if he grew up in state custody, that makes sense that you'd have problems. And that's bad, and I feel bad for him for that. But hurt people, and we got to stop the cycle of violence somewhere.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Stuart, go.
He kind of loudly touts his deliverance ministry. He hasn't been doing it as much lately, but
Mm-hmm.
deliverance ministry to me is where you bring people together, use music and things like that, and then you, in a sense, traumatize them or trigger them. When you trigger them, then they, of course, need to come down and get your solution, and then you regulate them. You put your arm around them and pray with them, or everybody prays with them, and they're in a group, and then they regulate, and then they're celebrating their victory, and they do it again. I think that kind of stuff, along with his rhetoric, traumatizes people, and he threatens to hit his congregation with a microphone. When he makes a strong point, he slams the microphone down on the deck, donk, and makes the sound just to kind of shock people. I think it's all kind of abusive,
I was glad you defined deliverance ministry. I always thought it was about rescuing people out of Appalachia when they hear banjo music, but this makes way more sense. Even though he's Mount Juliet, Tennessee.
That's pretty close.
And, I don't know. No, but all of it, but deliverance ministry, usually what that also means is, what are we going to do? We're going to get rid of your demons. And that's one of his favorite things is, she's wicked. She's got a demon in her. She's got the Jezebel spirit.
Yeah.
And it's all of this. It's just, I always go back and wonder this, how much of this shit does he actually believe? And how much of this shit is an act? And I think we're led to assume that this is all he's in on this, and he believes all this stuff. But I don't know. He's just too much of an internet troll and loves attention way too much for this to seem something like that he's totally bought into it. I think he's found something that makes money. And in these ministries, if you're making money and you're especially doing it authoritarianly, if there's people that are dissenters, we do whatever we can to drive them out. And then we'll blame it on witchcraft or demons or people infiltrating the church. It's like, I think you were mentioning, JD, about how people like to blame natural disasters on this, that, or the other. It kind of goes back to that, if something's going wrong with me, it's a demon, it's Satan, it could never be me. I'm never the problem because I'm God's chosen. But anybody that's not, it must be demonic.
I would say a lot of it's like influencer stuff. A lot of that stuff strikes me as influencer, which makes me think I don't believe it. And just real quickly, and I'll throw back to you, Dad. But I think a lot of that, it's the devil and stuff like that. One, you can see that obviously all throughout history with the Black Plague and all that thing. Everything is scapegoated. A bad harvest is always scapegoated on the devil, or God is punishing us. But I will say that, at least in the Old Testament, it seems like God does most of the damage. He's the one usually destroying stuff. So I think we should just keep attributing to him. It doesn't seem like the devil does that much of it. Or at least if the devil does do something, it's because God allowed him to. But anyway.
Yeah.
That's exactly what the devil would say.
Yeah, the devil has a lot less murders.
I am wearing a Taoist temple hat right now, so.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the devil has a lot less murders to his credit in the Holy Bible. So,
God's got a higher body count.
Yeah, he does. Way
Testament.
more. It's millions and millions instead of 12.
Yes,
it's severely lopsided.
Yes.
God has shooters.
So Greg always sees demons under every rock. And even so much as when his wife, to me, that's tragic. Two people probably with mental illness living together, never got the help they needed within church, never got mental health counseling that was good enough and those kind of things. But then when they split, he has to demonize her. Mm-hmm. So there's tape, there's YouTube of him demonizing his wife and talking about the women in his wife's Bible study and them all being demons, and we got your names, and he says, we know your address. It's that ridiculously kind of demoralizing, violent, just to scare everybody else. This is something you don't want to question me or mess with this, because these are demons, and I'm the guy. I'm the demon slayer, right? I'm the deliverance guy. So
he couldn't even do it in his own fucking wife.
Yeah, exactly.
Tough guy. You're a real demon slayer. Tape that by the Bible to the baseball bat, and you can't even get the fucking demon out of your wife.
Exactly.
It's because he didn't have a Trump Bible taped to it.
Or for himself.
That's that would. But like how one, I'm partially because if anyone knows like rural Tennessee, which is Mount Juliet, Tennessee, and I'm going to get super stereotypical here and just overspeak in generalities, but I'm going to imagine most of his church are folks that at best, a lot of them are going to have a high school education or have graduated high school at best. And not saying there's anything wrong with folks that, don't finish. This isn't like education shaming here, but you also have a guy who doesn't also have any formal seminary training, formal training of anything in this. And so you just have a person that an idiot leading other people, and they believe him because he's on the stage. And it's very easy to whip people and to change their worldviews doing this. And especially in small towns where there's not much else going on. And this is maybe one of the big events, and there's community around here. But Greg also, the fights he's fighting are always like low hanging fruit. There's silly stuff, there's small stuff, or even it was last year too. He held some debate because with some other pastor, and get this, I mean, Greg won it because he was arguing on the side that the earth is not flat. So he had another like flat earth pastor because there were some people in the church that were flat earthers. And so they had this whole debate, and then eventually Greg gets mad and kicks the guy out. I think that's kind of how he won the debate, but it was just it was as one of Greg's favorite word, it was a bunch of nonsense between both of them. And I mean, what are you doing for the kingdom? What is any of this about? It's just small stuff, and it just feels like high school. In the way that they're handling this, it just feels like the maturity of high school, but with a lot more authority and a ton more ego.
So what is it, about that we like? I mean, it's kind of connected with why do people support Trump? Mm-hmm. When he's a bad person, when he's abusive and aggressive and towards everybody, even people in his own camp sometimes. What is it that we like about that? Why are people drawn to that? To me, I agree with you. Without being condescending to people, a lack of education, whether that's formal or whether you do your own research and learn on your own. I think
hate that phrase.
Which one?
I do my own research.
Yeah, right.
Such a bullshit phrase.
Come on, Greg's done his own research.
Yeah. I know.
He's read it. I also understand what you mean. And I'm not trying to like say you're being either of you are being ridiculous, but it's just like when I have students that do their own research, which means they go look at it up on TikTok and tell me some nonsense.
When you learn, I would say when you learn on your own, like there's a guy I'm wanting to kind of look into his philosophy and theology and so on. So I bought 3 of his books so I could read what he says and digest that and think about it and test it and so on. And then I'll decide. I don't need, but if I take that thing of, well, I don't really want to learn anymore. I just want someone to tell me what to think. And I know you never say that out loud, but it's easier to do that when you've kind of been isolated in one place. You have never been outside of your home county. You've never read a book since high school. The thing I'm most proud of my children about is they, some were better students than the other one, and I don't fault them for that, but I know that all of them now read.
Don't throw me under the bus like that. That's not nice on the podcast.
One of my kids.
Yeah. Bad guy. he was a challenge. No,
Yeah.
I never felt that way really at all about my children. In fact, yeah, they're all different and they all learn different. But I'm
Dig it.
proudest that now they're still learning, right? So, but we need to kind of take that of, well, I'll take what they give me because I didn't fit in anywhere before. I was also had a bad childhood like Greg did. So I'm just going to let him feed me, protect me, and whatever else he claims to do. And now it's not to it's not to shame those that have lower education, but I think we all ought to keep learning and keep continuing and thinking for ourselves. When you can think for yourself, then you're not as apt to be controlled by someone that's a clown like that, an entertainer.
Yeah.
And you'll seek out people with deep truth and that understand truth and understand how the world works a lot better than this knucklehead.
But JD, you mentioned scapegoating earlier, and I think that speaks to a lot of this. It's powerful. You know, when you have problems, let's blame everything on something else, whether it's a people group, whether it's just an idea in the sky or whatever we're going to blame it on. But it gives them comfort to be able to know that, like, oh gosh, finally found a denomination where they hate all the same people I hate. I found home, you know, but it feels like that to where I feel like people do feel the kinship in their own pain when they're able to just launch that anger and vitriol somewhere else instead of dealing with it and going through the work of dealing with your trauma.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do that, but that's human society in general. We create these us versus them, and I even in my in my personal conversations, I try to some of that can be cathartic, and I think it's okay for a time to have a shared enemy. But even in my conversations, I try to not get into that too deep because I found myself doing it before, where you're like, oh, every time I talk to this person, all we do is complain about this other group or whatever. It's like it's not always the most constructive. But off of what you were saying, Dad, I was thinking that kind of made me think we need to maybe get more biblical and test all things and hold on to what is good, perhaps. But I don't know. But
when someone predicts something and it doesn't come true, then we anathemize them. That's the biblical way.
We have to know. Yeah, we have to know that that's not true. Now, but I as an educator, am just so disappointed that we have so much technology and that we use it so ineptly. That we go to these social media influencers as opposed to what I try to get my students to do, and is like go to Google Scholar and then go find academic sources and then find academic sources that disagree with those and then compare those and see and find metadata studies and things like that and actually get true data as opposed to the conjectures of, some middle American pastor. No offense to anyone in particular, but it's, this is a thing that I've been hearing throughout this whole podcast is kind of these mentions of like anti-intellectualism, which is a huge thing in the United States and has been since the inception of the United States. And I have that inside myself as well. Like people always are like, I do research every year, with my friend. This is humble bragging on my part, that we get published in journals here. And they're like, oh, why don't you go study your master's? Why don't you go study? It's like, I don't want to pay for it. I don't want to take time. Like I could do the research on my own, but I wish we would get, and I'm not always good about this as well. So after my humble brag, I'll say I'm also bad about this sometimes, but I hope that we can get to a place where we actually do our own research. When do your own research actually means, oh, I went and read a book or multiple books, and then I looked at the sources that they source from and things like that. But the issue is people just don't have a lot of time. And so I understand where people get that from, but I think we also have to get to a place where you don't have to be an expert at everything, because that's a thing now. And it kind of goes back to the alpha male thing, which is like, I'm right and I'm right about everything. We have to get away from those things. And I try to show my students this in a lot of ways. They'll ask me about math or like complex grammar, and I'm like, not a math teacher, not a physics teacher, not a biology teacher. I really don't know. You probably know more about it than I do. Now, if you want to go do research about it, I'll do the research with you. but I don't know because I'm not an expert in that field. And I think that's an important thing to tell ourselves. Like, I don't know about this. I would like to learn, and then go and learn about it, as opposed to just take the easy route and go, I know it's lazy, but it's easy. So
JD and I had an encounter not too long ago. So I was talking to him about complex PTSD, and he questioned that and said, where's the study? Where's the research? And pretty quickly I found that research, and gave him the link and so on. But that, for me, that wasn't the end of it, because I was kind of quoting to him from Herman's book, Trauma and Recovery. And so that was my main source, but I hadn't read the book. And so I'd seen bits and pieces of it. So now I'm in the process of reading that book, because not just that I want JD to agree with me or accept what I pass down to him, which I know he won't anyhow. He's going to think it through himself. Mm-hmm. But I also wanted to know for myself more about that fact, and more about that understanding that I didn't know. And so Greg Locke may feel like it's an accomplishment when he can influence not a million people, right? Because of that process he's got where he controls. Mm-hmm. And if you don't agree with him, you can leave. Get out of here right now, you Democrat, and all that. But what I wish is that he would do a little more research into how you're traumatizing people. Mm. And what they really need is not what you're giving them. You're just giving them something that's easy. It's like bad medicine or drinking too much or whatever, Anyway.
No, but it made me think tangentially about that. But no, what you're talking about too, Carl, like you taught your kids to be critical thinkers. And to be, you attempted to be critical thinkers and to kind of understand who they are. And it's difficult. I've got 4 kids, and we tried, my wife and I tried to raise them to be individuals, to be critical thinkers and all of that. And it's wonderful, but it's also a pain in the ass sometimes when they're younger. And it's hard. Yeah, it's very hard. But thinking about that, if the pastor who's leading this church is this idea that like, this is the spiritual daddy and these are my sheep down here. I mean, being able to teach a congregation how to think for themselves, how to process things, instead of just giving them like fast food versions of knowledge. Yeah. I mean, that would be huge, a huge difference in so many churches, but that really sucks for control structure as I've seen as a parent, where I'm like, well, I want you to think this through. I want you to do it this way, but but under my breath. But yeah, but it's there's that letting go of it as well too. And I think it's a risk that these kind of authoritarian preachers it's a risk they can't take, to try to educate their congregations to be able to think more, to be able to be more critical and like how they're approaching information in social media. No, we're feeding you the way we want to feed you now. It's and I think that is how he keeps people in check.
Well,
because
it's also it's and I'm not a parent, so I'm going to speak out of turn here, but I think, at least I guess I can speak from a teacher's point of view. It is a scary thing to go, I'm not sure, I don't know actually. Mm-hmm. But you actually get a lot more respect when you go, I don't know, but either I'll figure it out or we can research it together. But I think for a lot of those people, they don't actually want to do their own research, talking about people in positions of power. And it's much easier, and it allows them much more control, to your point, to just go, no, this is the way it is. And even when I'm wrong, I'm right. So shut up and listen to me or get the fuck out. Mm-hmm. But obviously that's dangerous. But again, if you say, do your own research, if they actually do their own research and come to ask you the questions, well, you haven't done your own research, so you can't answer those questions anyway. So it doesn't really work like that. But
I have an illustration. I don't know if it's going to fit or not, but I'm going to try here. So early on in my pastoral career, someone insinuated to me that preaching was kind of like pablum. It's like a bird that eats the food and chews it up and then gives it to her little birds. And so I was conscious of that early on in my preaching career, that kind of what I'm doing is I've researched something now. I'm throwing it back up to my congregation, and it's already been digested for them, and it's ready to go, or partially digested or whatever. So we started about a year ago, 6 months to a year ago, we started using this Lumi, or I can't remember the right name for it, but it's a what's the right word? It takes our old food, we put our food in it, and composts it.
Okay.
Right.
A composter.
It's much like it's indoor, and it takes care of all the odor and stuff, and then it produces this kind of grain-like material that can be just thrown on your garden or thrown on your lawn. So the problem with that is all the animals can smell that. It smells like food to them, and they come and eat it. And a dog gets in trouble and doesn't get a treat when he comes back in and goes over to the compost bin and sticks his snout up underneath it and messes everything up and takes that. The other day he did that, and I don't know how much he ate of it, but he got really sick, and then he pooped in the bedroom. Later on, he threw up on the couch, and it was all that pre-digested food from the composter, and it was the grossest thing I'd ever seen. And so then we had to scoop it up off the carpet and put it in the trash. So that would be normal for us before. Put it in down the garbage disposal or throw it in the trash, so the other dog could get it out of the trash. Anyway, it was just such a disappointing series of events there. And I think it'd be much better off if we spend the hours teaching people how to get their own food than just regurgitating whatever works for us. In the meantime, whatever helps control them, make them do what we want them to do, and so on. Just to teach them how to find their own food, and not to.
Yeah.
Winston doesn't have as much of a prefrontal cortex, doesn't have as much brain power there, and he can't get it because of his root brain that says, that smells like food to me, so I'm going to go get it, even if I'm going to get in trouble.
I like that. That's good advice for Greg Locke. See, if by not doing that, you can avoid people shitting on the carpets in the church, and that's just practical. That's just helpful, because it is hard to get shit out of carpet. I've had dogs before too. It's not nice.
People probably go shit on other people, because
to keep
they know.
Carpets clean.
Because
potentially harder to wash out when you shit in someone else's brain.
Yeah. Anyway.
Wow. Well, shit.
Well,
did we get that?
I think we can all
head us off in the ditch.
We can all agree that we should teach people to fish as opposed to give them fish.
Yeah.
Something like that, to mix our metaphors.
Something like that.
That's the classy way to end this.
Yeah.
Shit on a fish.